Hello and welcome to another video lecture from MrWatkins.com. I'm Mr. Watkins. This picture that we have here has come straight out of your textbook. What I've done is I've replaced the labels with letters. The idea of this video is to be able to go over the cerebrum in a way that will help you study. And so at some point here I'm going to say things like, all right, so letter B is, and then pause for you to kind of fill that in, and then I will tell you what that particular structure is. Before we get started on that, though, I want to go over the general features that we're seeing here on this lateral view of the brain. We're looking at the left side of the brain here. We have our spinal cord coming up into the brain stem. We have the cerebellum, but we're going to focus on all of these pieces. Now H, and we'll talk about this in a little bit as well, H is the central sulcus. It's that central fissure that runs there on the side of the brain, and basically everything from that central sulcus anterior here is going to be considered the frontal lobe. Everything back behind, or kind of behind, all the way up to about this point. So this area right in here, this is going to be the parietal lobe. You have a lateral fissure that runs this way, and this lateral fissure basically marks off the temporal lobe. Remember the skull, we're kind of following those same kind of bones, and then back here on the back side is the occipital lobe. Okay, now this gyrus here and this gyrus here we're going to talk about in just a minute when we go through those letters, but that's basic structure, general structure of the brain, the overall brain. So now let's walk through some of these letters here, and again I'm going to pause to give you a chance to respond, and then I'll give you what the right answer is to that. If you're looking for functions of these things, you need to go through your book, you need to go online, look at the notes and things that we've done to get some of those functions. I'm really focusing on this one, on making sure that you know where these structures are. So let's start here with the letter B, and the letter B is pointing to this section right here on the temporal lobe, and letter B then is the auditory association area. Letter C is just this darker pink part right here, so letter C is the primary auditory area. The letter B and the letter C together, they make up a thing called the transverse gyrus. Okay, and I'm going to work my way around even though I'm not going alphabetically here. Letter N, very important area, that is Wernicke's area, or the sensory speech area. Letter M, as in Mary, this area right here that's yellow, this is going to be the visual cortex. Letter L, it's all of this area here. Letter L, this will be, what is letter L? It is the visual association area. Okay, letter K, pointing to this area right back here. Letter K is the somatic sensory association area. And we're going to move all the way over here to J, and it's this little spot right here. So this is J, this little spot, letter J is the primary taste area. Now, letter H, I, and G are kind of all tied together. You've got to be able to find letter H. So letter H is this piece that runs right down here, this place where the cerebrum goes in. So letter H is the central sulcus. And then just posterior to the central sulcus is letter I, and letter I is the post-central gyrus. It's also called the primary somatic sensory area. This is going to be sensory side on the brain. Okay, so we have already talked about H being the central sulcus. Letter G is this gyrus that's here on the anterior end, or the anterior side of the central sulcus. So letter G is the precentral gyrus, also called the primary somatic motor area. And I'm just going to take a moment to pause here. This place, this sulcus, really divides up your sensory versus your motor. Your sensory versus your motor. And I want you to remember back on the videos that we've looked at where we talked about the amygdala, and we talked about this frontal lobe area being one of the last areas in the brain to basically, it's not so much form, but finish its development. that area here is motor side, or at least this part right up in here. So G is going to be the pre-central gyrus. It's going to be a motor end, whereas I is the post-central gyrus, which is going to be the sensory end. Okay, so let's look at F. F is this area right here. So F is the premotor area. This is again a motor side. E is this part right up here in the front. So E is the prefrontal area. D is pointing to this little piece right here, this little part on the brain, that area on the gyrus. So D is Broca's area, which is a motor speech area. This is the very basic parts that you need to be aware of on the brain. Make sure that you label many of these on your sheet brain dissection. That's it. Thank you.